Stoic Diary. Rejection isn't a punishment. It's a compass that pushes you right where you need to be. Even though in the moment it stings, it hurts, and it makes you feel like the whole world is telling you, you're not enough. The truth is different. They weren't kicking you out, they were redirecting you. Because yes, rejection kicks the ego, but it polishes the soul. It breaks you from the inside so you can rebuild yourself better. It's uncomfortable, unfair. Sometimes it fills you with questions that no one answers. But if you look closely, over time you realize that the person who left you, that job that didn't happen, that's not you, it's me. They were pushes disguised as failures. Because what goes away makes space. What doesn't fit shows you the mold that wasn't for you, and what hurts teaches. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to transform every rejection into your greatest strength. You're going to learn to look into it in the eyes, without fear, without resentment, and even with gratitude. Because the last point, I swear, for everything that has broken my life, will make you say, thank you for not choosing me, because that forced me to choose me. Now let's begin. 1. Use rejection to your advantage. Look, rejection has two paths. Either you use it as an excuse to break down, or you turn it into fuel to propel you forward. There's no other way. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. You can't control what others do to you, but you can decide what you do with it. Because when someone says no to you, when an opportunity doesn't present itself, when life seems to slam the door in your face, it's easy to fall into the trap of victimhood and think that you're simply not enough. But that's where you have a powerful choice. To stay licking your wounds, or ask yourself what this situation is trying to teach you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle in the path becomes the path. And it's not just a pretty phrase to post on Instagram. It's a truth that, if you truly understand it, can turn you around completely. When you're rejected, what they're giving you is a different direction. A reminder that there's another way, another level, another you that you don't know yet, but that you'll discover if you move on. Many times, that no that hurt so much was what took you out of your comfort zone, forced you to grow, to rethink things, to work on yourself with more discipline, more clarity, more purpose. And that's what very few people tell you, that well-channeled rejection becomes one of the most powerful forces for evolution. It's not the end, it's the beginning of a transformation. If you're rejected in a relationship, perhaps it's the push you needed to reconnect with yourself. If you're rejected at work, it may be the sign that forces you to undertake something of your own, something bigger. And if you're rejected for being different, for thinking differently, for not fitting in, then maybe it's time to stop fitting into other people's molds and start building your own. Rejection doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to redirect you. Sometimes you have to be grateful for those closed doors, because if they had opened, you would have ended up in a place that wasn't meant for you. So use it, not to fill yourself with resentment or to prove anything to others. No one, but to become that version of yourself that no longer needs to be accepted because you learned to accept yourself first. 2. Rejection doesn't take away your worth. It shows you where they don't see you. Let's get one thing straight right now. Just because someone doesn't choose you doesn't mean you're worthless. It means that person, that place, that moment, or that opportunity didn't have the capacity to see you completely. And that, as painful as it may be, is a blessing in disguise, because you're not in this world to beg anyone to value you or to force your essence into spaces where it doesn't fit. When someone rejects you, the most common thing is to think that you did something wrong, that something about you wasn't enough. And that's where one begins to drag around guilt that doesn't even belong to them. But stop for a moment, breathe, and look at it from this other perspective. And if the problem isn't you, but that you simply weren't in the right place to flourish, the Stoics wouldn't tell you that rejection is pretty or easy, because it isn't. But they would tell you that your worth as a human being doesn't depend, never rely on the opinions or decisions of others. Epictetus said that things beyond our control should not disturb our peace, and that includes what others think of you. And mind you, Nietzsche also said this from a different perspective when he talked about becoming who you are destined to be, despite the judgment of the herd. So if someone doesn't see your light, don't turn off the spotlight, change places. The problem was never that you shone too brightly. The problem is that you were surrounded by people who preferred the shadows. And that's why every rejection, even if it hurts, is doing you a huge favor. It's saying no to you so you can find that path where your value is recognized without you having to shout it out. Not everyone has eyes trained to see the gold in the dirt, and you don't have to be constantly polishing yourself to convince them. You're fine just the way you are. And if something needs adjusting, it will be because you decided to, not because someone else slams the door on you. So when someone says no, when they don't return your message, when you're not chosen for that project, or when you're left out without a reason, remember it well. They didn't take anything away from you. They just reminded you where you don't need to insist anymore. And that, believe it or not, is a very honest way of protecting your energy. Because sometimes the real problem isn't that you're not accepted. It's that you keep trying to convince someone who has no idea what they're missing. Your job isn't to convince, it's to keep growing. And believe me, when that happens, you'll realize that the rejection was never personal, it was directional. And that, even if you don't understand it at first, is where your freedom begins. 3. Sometimes being rejected is being saved without realizing it. Look, I know this may sound strange when your heart is in tatters or your self-esteem is dragging on the floor, but listen carefully. Sometimes the rejection that hurts so much was, without you knowing it at the time, the rescue you didn't ask for, but that you needed. And no, it's not a phrase, it's a cheap consolation to embellish suffering. It's a reality that begins to reveal itself over time, when the drama has passed, when you've stopped looking at your cell phone waiting for a message that never came, or searching for explanations where there was never any clarity. Rejection, although at first it feels like a loss, is often a shield in disguise, a way of life or destiny or the universe or whatever you believe to protect you from something you weren't going to see until you got out of there. And the Stoics knew this very well. They spoke of living in harmony with nature, not in the ecological sense we understand today, but with the natural flow of life, with what happens even if you don't like it. Marcus Aurelius said it without embellishment. What happens, happens for you. And by that, he meant that everything that comes or goes from your life is contributing to your formation as a human being. It's not that everything happens for a mystical reason, but that you can give a purpose to everything that happens. And that's where this brutal idea comes in. Being rejected isn't being discarded, it's being redirected. It's as if life is telling you, not there. That wasn't for you. And even if you kick, cry, and want to hold on, later on you'll see that you got rid of something you didn't see at the time. 0848. You, or break you later on. And it doesn't just happen with people or relationships, but also with jobs, social circles, even decisions you weren't allowed to make. There are stories everywhere of people who were fired from a job and ended up undertaking something that changed their lives. Of those who were rejected by one person and then met someone who did appreciate everything they were. Of those who didn't get into college and years later were hired by the same companies they admired. Steve Jobs once said it, "You can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And you don't see it when you're in the middle of chaos. But later on, if you have the courage to keep walking, everything falls into place." So yes, being rejected hurts. No one does. Deny it. But many times that pain is the price of invisible protection. Maybe they kept you away from something that didn't deserve you, that was going to hurt you, that was going to make you small. And if you see it that way, everything changes. You didn't lose, you were saved. So the next time they close the door on you, instead of asking, "Why me?" maybe you should just say, "Thank you for not letting me stay where I didn't belong." 4. You weren't insufficient. You were just in the wrong place. Let's put a name to something that many feel, but few dare to say out loud. That feeling of not having been enough after a rejection, as if no matter how hard you tried, how hard you gave, how much you gave your all, still, it wasn't enough. And that hurts. It hurts deeply. You start going over everything mentally as if you were performing an emotional autopsy, wondering what you were missing. What did you do wrong? What did you fail at? And that's where the most dangerous self-deception of all begins. Believing that the problem was you, but stop for a second because this is key. No, you weren't insufficient, you weren't insignificant, you weren't a mistake. What was happening is that you were in the wrong place with the wrong person, in the wrong environment, trying to fit into a structure that simply wasn't designed for you. It's that simple and that liberating, because it's not that you didn't have value, but that you were trying to be recognized in a context where that value couldn't be understood, accepted, or appreciated. It's like trying to explain poetry in a room of mathematicians. It's not that your poem isn't worth anything, it's that you're with the wrong audience. And that's where Stoic philosophy comes in full force. The Stoics spoke of the logos, that natural order of things, that inevitable flow of reality. For them, resisting that was a constant source of suffering. And yes, it is. Forcing yourself to fit in where you don't belong, holding on to crumbs, hoping someone will see you when you're already there, screaming internally. It's like going against the grain of life, and it's exhausting. But when you understand that there are places where it's simply not you that's the problem, but the environment, everything changes. It changes because you stop blaming yourself and start redirecting your energy. It changes because instead of trying to become someone else to be liked, you stand firm in who you are, knowing that eventually you'll reach the place where that will be seen as a treasure, not a burden. Look, even nature understands this. A cactus seed doesn't bloom in the forest, nor can a fish breathe out of water. So why do you force yourself to flourish in strange soil? It's not about trying harder. It's about finding the terrain that resonates with your essence. And sometimes rejection is life's way of telling you, get out of there. That's not your place. Because when you find the right place, what today felt like inadequacy will tomorrow be seen as authenticity. So stop beating yourself up for not being what someone expected. Be grateful that this is bringing you closer to those who will know how to value everything you are without having to change a comma. 5. When someone go ahead, make room for you to arrive. This point may hurt at first, but it can also heal deep down if you allow it. Because yes, when someone leaves, it hurts. Whether it's a person, an opportunity, or a stage of your life, it feels like a part of your soul has been ripped out without anesthesia. But what you don't see at first, because the pain clouds everything, is that sometimes when someone leaves, it's not to leave you empty, it's to leave space. And that space, even if it now feels like a void, is exactly the place where you have to arrive. Not a made-up, complacent, or adapted version for others, but you, real, complete, free, unfiltered. What happens is that we often build our identity around what others think, what they want from us, how they validate us. We become experts at being ourselves. We forget to be for ourselves. And when that person leaves, when we are rejected, when something ends, we feel like we too are leaving with that. But no, what really leaves is the character you had created for yourself. Keep all of that going. And that, even if it feels like a loss, is liberating. The Stoics spoke of living in accordance with nature, and part of that means accepting that everything changes, that everything flows, that nothing is guaranteed or permanent. Marcus Aurelius said that loss is nothing more than change, and change is the nature of the universe. So if everything changes, why do we cling so tightly to what's no longer there? Maybe because we're afraid of what comes next, but that's the rub. What comes next can be more you than ever. It's in those empty spaces that new roots are planted. When someone leaves you, when that friendship goes, when you don't get that job, when a period ends, what remains isn't just a void, it's an opportunity to return to yourself, to reconnect with what you truly want, to cleanse your inner space and fill it with presence, not absence. And of course, at first, you'll want to fill that space with anything: distractions, new people, urgent plans. But if you have the courage to stay there for a while, with yourself, in silence, in honesty, you will discover something powerful. That space wasn't for someone else. It was for you. Yes, yes, let those who don't value you go. Let the doors that don't belong to you close. Let the castles you built out of fear fall, because in that disorder you will find the most valuable thing of all, the perfect space to rebuild yourself from the truth. And believe me, when you finally arrive, you lack nothing. 6. Rejection hurts because it breaks the ego, not the soul. Let's be clear. What hurts about rejection? It's not just someone saying no to you, or being left out, or not being chosen for something you longed for. What really hurts is the direct blow to the ego. Because the soul, believe me, the soul endures more than we think. But the ego, that is fragile, proud, and dramatic. The ego is what sets up the story where you had already been accepted, loved, admired, validated. And when that doesn't happen, it feels like if a dream you'd already decorated with mental flowers were shattered. But this is where Stoic philosophy brings you back down to earth and, in the process, frees you. You're not your ego. You're not your narrative. You're not what you expected to happen. You are the ability to continue even when things didn't turn out as you expected. Epictetus said that we are not disturbed by the facts, but by our interpretation of them. And that applies perfectly here, because rejection in itself neither defines nor destroys you. It's your interpretation of that rejection that puts a stone around your neck or a ladder under your feet. When someone rejects you, they aren't writing your worth in stone. They are simply deciding from their world, from their beliefs, from their limited vision, or from their own emptiness. But if you take that rejection as an absolute truth about who you are, then you are handing the helm of your life over to the judgment of others. And that, my friend, is where unnecessary suffering begins. The ego wants everything recognized, to never be rejected, for everything to go as you planned. But life doesn't work that way. And the sooner you accept it, the lighter you'll walk. There's a Buddhist teaching that fits perfectly here. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. It's okay to be hurt. It's human. It's part of the process. But staying there wallowing in that pain because you can't stand the wound to your pride, that's your decision. The soul, on the other hand, doesn't need to be accepted by anyone. The soul doesn't break because someone leaves or because something doesn't work out. The soul observes, feels, learns, and continues. Therefore, every time rejection prickles your pride, look it in the face and tell yourself, this doesn't kill me, it shapes me. It doesn't define me, it directs me, and doesn't break me, it awakens me. Because one thing is clear, the soul that accepts what the ego doesn't understand is a free soul, and there is no greater freedom than that. 7. It's not a punishment. It's a necessary redirection. Look, when things don't go as you expected, the first thing you think is that life is punishing you, that the universe has a grudge against you, or that you're doing something wrong, because that's how we were taught. If things aren't going well, it's because you failed. But there's something I want you to understand today with all your heart and without embellishment. Not everything that falls apart is a loss. Sometimes it's a redirection. And yes, it's hard to see when you're in the middle of disaster, when everything seems to be falling apart and you don't understand why. But sometimes what seems like a tragedy is actually life pushing you down another path that you took on the right path. You didn't dare take, and that's where Stoic wisdom comes in, like a flashlight in the middle of chaos. The Stoics never complained about fate. On the contrary, they accepted it firmly, as if they knew that everything that happens is there to teach them something. Marcus Aurelius said to love what happens to you because that's what nature has woven for you. Do you realize the power of that phrase? It's not just about enduring, It's about trusting, because sometimes that no that hurts so much, that project that didn't work out, that person who left, that opportunity that closed the door on you, door in your face, they were actually sparing you from greater harm, stagnation, a life that wasn't yours. It's as if life were telling you, don't insist there, don't waste any more time, don't lock yourself away in what no longer resonates with you. Of course, the ego doesn't like that because it wants to be in control, because it had already made plans, because it had grown attached to the idea. But you didn't come to this world to fulfill broken expectations. You came to discover your path. And sometimes the only way to do that is for life to abruptly take you from the place where you were staying out of fear or habit. It's not punishment. It's love in its rawest form. It's a painful but necessary readjustment. And if you're willing to look with fresh eyes, you'll realize that many of your best decisions were born from those rejections, because you were forced to rethink everything, to get to know yourself better, to grow, to break out of what made you small. So the next time something doesn't go the way you wanted, before curse it or go into victim mode, take a deep breath and say, this, even though I don't understand it now, is getting me to where I really need to be. 8. Being told this can't be the greatest gift in the long run, even if it's hard to see at first and hurts your deepest pride. There are times when the no that hurt you so much becomes, over time, into the wisest gift you could ever receive. Yes, that no that closed the door on you, that left you on the bench, that didn't give you the place you thought you deserved. That same no can end up being the turning point that pushes you to build something much bigger than what you were hoping for. But of course, when it first happens, you don't see it that way. You experience it as a betrayal, as a personal defeat, as if that didn't define your worth. And that's where I want to shake you up a bit. That no didn't take anything away from you. It redirected you to what is for you, what corresponds to you, what aligns with your true purpose. And I don't say this just from the heart, I say it with Stoic support. Epictetus taught that we should not wish for things to happen the way we want them to, but rather want them to happen as they happen, because it is there, in that active acceptance, where true transformation begins. Sometimes what you asked for was very little compared to what life had in store for you, but to get there, you had to let go of that limited version of your dreams. And what better way to let it go than with a big no in the face? It hurts, yes, but it forces you to think, to grow, to ask questions, to look at new paths. There are many people who are grateful years later for not having been accepted for that job, for not having continued with that relationship, for not having been part of that project, because thanks to that they created their own path. Steve Jobs once said it. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. And if you think about it, a lot of times he's not pushing you right there to find what you really love, what really resonates with you. Because while you're busy chasing something that's not for you, you're missing the opportunity to discover what is. So yes, maybe today that one won't hurt you, bring tears to your eyes, or break your plans. But if you have patience, if you keep going, if you don't get stuck, you'll look back and say, thank goodness it didn't work out, because thanks to it, I worked out, because that one didn't bring me back to myself, because that one didn't make me strong, make me free, make me real. So when they tell you no, smile inside. Maybe without knowing it, you just got the best yes of your life. 9. Learn to lose without losing yourself. This is one of those lessons you can't learn from books or pretty phrases on social media. You learn from scars, because losing is part of the game of life. There's no debating that. You will lose people, jobs, opportunities, time, money, relationships, friendships, and that's okay, because no one lives a completely untouched life. What's not right, and this is where I want you to listen to me with an open heart, is that in the midst of everything you lose, you also lose yourself, because that's when it becomes dangerous, because it's one thing for life to take something away from you, and quite another for you to give up your identity, your worth, your peace, because something didn't go the way you wanted. And that, my friend, is what most happens after a rejection. You shut yourself out as if you only had value if you won, as if you only mattered if you were chosen, as if your self-worth depended on a validation you were never meant to need. But here comes the most brutal and liberating reminder we can draw from Stoicism. You are the only thing that always belongs to you. Everything else is borrowed, temporary, unstable. Your job may change, your partner may leave, your plans may fall apart, but if you know how to take care of your center, your integrity, your essence, you will always have the power to start over. And I'm not saying this from a pedestal, I'm saying this as someone who has also lost, who has also felt the ground disappear, and yet here we are. And we are here because we decided not to lose the only thing that is not negotiable: dignity. Seneca said that no wind is favorable for those who don't know which port they're headed to, and that applies perfectly here. If you don't know who you are beyond what you achieve, what you obtain, what others give you or take away from you, any rejection will break you. But if you are clear about your port, your north, your essence, then losing will not be the end. It will simply be a detour. And look, losing also has its beauty. It leaves you lighter, forces you to let go of what you thought was indispensable. It confronts you with your emptiness, yes, but also with your strength, with that part of you that survives the shipwreck. So learn to lose without losing yourself. If they dumped you, if they didn't choose you, if something ended, cry if you need to, scream if necessary, but then get up, look in the mirror, and remind yourself who you are. Because when you don't get lost in the middle of the storm, you've already won. And that's the most stoic victory of all. 10. Rejection is the mirror that forces you to truly look at yourself. This point is not easy to digest, but it is perhaps one of the most transformative, because rejection, even if you see it as a blow from outside, is actually a mirror that confronts you with what is inside and not with the image you like to show, not with the character you built to survive in the world, but with what you are when no one applauds you, when you are not chosen, when you are left out. And that, although uncomfortable, is deeply necessary, because while everything is going well, it's easy to pretend security, self-esteem, inner peace. But when you're rejected, the masks fall, the wounds are revealed, doubts are ignited, and that's where the great opportunity appears. Look at yourself without filters. Truly ask yourself, what are you expecting from others? What parts of yourself are you giving up out of necessity? What are you demanding from the outside that you should actually be building inside? The Stoics were no strangers to this type of process. They saw every difficulty as a kind of purification. Seneca said that a strong fire tests the temper of steel and adversity of men. Rejection is fire, not meant to burn you, but to reveal what you're made of. Because sometimes you think you have self-respect until they leave you on read. You think you're confident until you're chosen. You think you're healed until he opens the same wound again. But don't be confused. It's not a step backwards. It's an invitation to see yourself, to get to know yourself, to work with yourself, to take care of your internal dialogue, your expectations, your personal history. It's like that awkward moment in front of the mirror where you can't look away, and it's okay that it hurts, but it's also okay that you feel more real than ever. Because when you stop disguising yourself to please, when you dare to look at your emptiness without fear, when you understand that you don't need to please everyone to be enough, true freedom begins. You are not here to avoid rejection. You are here to learn from him. So that every time something doesn't go the way you wanted, instead of blaming yourself, you ask yourself, what is this showing me about myself? Where do I need to heal, grow, change, or accept? Because if you use rejection as a mirror, every no becomes an opportunity to rebuild yourself with more truth, more courage, and more self-love. And that, believe me, is worth more than any validation. External. 11. It hurts, but when you heal, you're thankful it didn't work out. Yes, I know. At the moment, It doesn't feel like a blessing or a lesson or something you'll ever be grateful for. Hurts. And not just any pain, but the kind that settles in your chest, that steals your appetite, that makes you question whether it was worth it to open up, to give yourself over, to get excited. Rejection leaves a mark that doesn't fade quickly, but it's not permanent either. And that's what we often forget, that healing is possible, even if it seems impossible now, because time passes, emotions cool, wounds heal, and one day, without knowing exactly how, you find yourself saying, "Thank goodness it didn't work out." And that's when you truly understand, when you stop looking at what you lost and start seeing everything you gained. You didn't get what you wanted, but you gained clarity, character, inner strength. And that, even if no one applauds you, is a silent but profound victory. The Stoics were masters in this way of understanding life. They didn't live waiting for things to go their way, but rather they cultivated inner peace so they could be okay even when things didn't go their way. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: "What impedes action advances action. What gets in the way becomes the way." So if something didn't work out, that relationship, that job, that opportunity, maybe it wasn't a failure. Maybe it was the spark that ignited your true path. And it's not about denying the pain. It's about not staying stuck in it, about allowing yourself to feel it, yes, to grieve it, to process it, but also to let go when it no longer serves you. Because if you hold on to what wasn't, you close yourself off to all that can still be. And when you finally cross that emotional bridge, when you heal, when you return to yourself with more steadfastness, more self-love, more awareness, that rejection no longer hurts the same. It becomes a memory, a lesson, even an anecdote to tell. And as contradictory as it may seem, there comes a time when you are grateful. You are grateful that it didn't work out, because now you understand that you were aiming for something that wasn't for you, that you were settling for less, that you were holding on for fear and not out of love. And the strongest thing of all is this: if it had worked, maybe you would never have grown. So yes, it hurts, but it passes. And when it does, you are grateful, not because it was easy, but because thanks to it, you are now a more complete person, more aware, more yourself. And so, after exploring each of these truths together, there is something I would like you to take away, tattooed in your mind and heart. Rejection didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal you, to crudely show you what you no longer needed, what was holding you back, what you had idealized out of fear of losing. Yes, it shook you. It broke your mold. It made you doubt yourself, and for a moment, perhaps even convinced you that you weren't worth it. But now you know that wasn't the case. Now you know that every no hid a new beginning, that every closed door pushed you to knock on others, and that many times, instead of begging for acceptance, what you needed was to choose yourself again. Today, after everything we talked about, the invitation is not for you to lose your fear of rejection as if it were something that could be avoided, because it can't. The invitation is to look at it with different eyes, to live it with courage, so that when it knocks on your door again, because it will come back one way or another, you receive it not as a sentence, but as a map that will take you right to where you need to be. And there, on that path that is more yours than ever, you will discover that you weren't rejected. You were redirected, awakened, sharpened, elevated. So if you've made it this far, I want to invite you to something deeper than just watching this video. Join the community we're building, a place where we can share these ideas, grow together, and continue learning day by day. In the description and pinned comment, I'll leave you the links to the WhatsApp group and the Telegram channel, so you can be part of this stoic, humane, and transformative movement. And of course, if this content resonated with you, I invite you to support it. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, leave me your like, and above all, comment downstairs. Thanks to that one, I didn't come back to myself, because there are rejections that, even though they hurt, brought us back home. See you in the next video, And remember, what wasn't prepared you for what will be.